chain that really contributes to that. And one other thing I wanted to say is also that if you look at the younger, I think I'm Generation X, I'm from the 60s, so I've been around for a while. But if you look at the younger generation, like Generation Y, and Z, they're really looking more at companies that have a purpose, are responsible, and when they make their choice, either as an employer or as something to buy from, a service or a good. So I think we also need to look at that consumers are more and more looking at different ways of when buying something, and I think having a more sustainable, more inclusive, being a more inclusive and responsible company really is essential.
Are you guys promoting that promoting in terms of making this transparent in your communication to consumers or to your clients?
Absolutely. We have, I was talking about corporate social responsibility, but we do have a report annually that comes out, and we have a webpage where we actually show our progress in what we're doing. And for us, it's not just about engaging diverse businesses into our supply chain. We also want to help them to be more resilient and grow and be ready to supply to companies like Accenture, BP, and Intel. And I know Fabienne has been through our process for our diverse supply development program. It's being postponed, but we're going to launch it in Austria, Switzerland, and Germany as well, because we see that there's an investment in sharing our expertise to those diverse businesses so that they can be more resilient. Like I said, they help them to understand our long, complex tender processes so that they can become more successful in winning business. So it's more than that. So that's how we also open up to the market and say, we invest not only by spending with you, but we also invest by sharing our knowledge with you.
And I think that's something super important, right? Because we were discussing in our pre-chat before we started the webinar here. Sometimes I would say conflicting targets that you have. Now, from one end, for example, let's talk about payment terms, right? Having payment terms of X amount of days, and then dealing with diverse or small, medium companies where you have to bring some flexibility to the topic payment terms, right? Because not all companies, let's be honest, are going to be able to work for 60 days until they get their money, right, from corporate. So there is kind of a how can I say that, a new way or a flexible way requested to look into diverse suppliers, I would say. Before we move ahead, I just wanted to greet here a couple of people that are that joined us as attendees. I see here Cindy with VP. We exchanged some emails. Cindy, it's good that you're here. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure where you are located right now. We also have Bill and John from CIPS in Switzerland who joined us, and Andrea Fimian. Andrea partnered with me in a similar webinar like this one a few months ago. I think it was in May. At that time, Andrea was still with IBM. Now she is with her own consulting company on the topic diversity and inclusion. Supplier diversity. FIPS Consulting LLC. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. And there is someone here sending a message as well. Greetings from Meek Productions, world's first LGBTQ exclusive talent agents and production company. So well done, everyone. And welcome to the webinar as well. Yeah, Pauline is just adding here, payment terms for SMEs are a problem. What are the big corporates doing about that? So let's just speak on that question here from Pauline. Thanks, Pauline. Let's just spend a little while on the payment terms. So you guys from corporate, so is there any flexibility that you are bringing to the table in the discussions with the diverse suppliers on the payment terms topic?
Yeah, we do have, when it comes to SMEs, we already had that before the pandemic, more favorable payment terms, like say 30 days or maybe sometimes even 15 days. And I think, it's also part of investing in your supplier base that you don't want to, if you keep stuck with 60 and sometimes even 90 days payment terms, you're going to lose those suppliers. And that brings me back to the innovation. Like, you really want to support those suppliers to be innovative and, and support you in your operations as well. So if you don't invest in them, you will lose them, and then you lose out. You have to find another supplier, right? That's going to cost you money as well. So I think, we do have a more proactive approach on when it comes to SMEs and really the suppliers that you want to have a long relationship with. We do have favorable payment terms.
Yeah, sure. Fabian, you.
I think I would like to add the supplier perspective here as well, because of course it is, it depends on if you work also for big corporates. We're not talking about small amounts of budgets, but it's bigger amount of budgets. So yes, they are. I mean, the average is, I think I would say it's third. So you've got still some that really stick with their payment terms, which is really long and it's sometimes over 45 days. So you have to really understand 45 days is actually 2 months payroll time for staff actually. But there is also lots of new things like Peter is saying. Of course, I agree with that too. And there is also early payment processes that are settled in with a few companies which offer diverse suppliers to jump onto that early payment process. But actually that early payment process comes along with a fee that you have to pay as a supplier. So you just have to also validate as a supplier whether you want to pay those fees or not. And yes, and there are also corporates or companies that then do offer, actually, just because you're an SME per se, without any add-on costs, not a prepayment but an early payment. So you have all three different, and it's also as an SME. I mean, this is also things that you have to have in mind when you work for corporates. That is something that you have to be there, and therefore I am very, very thankful to EGLCC as our advocacy group, because what they do is they help us. They tweet us, they mentor us, and they explain to us how it is to get into this vendor business and how we can go. So we are actually well prepared, more or less. I mean, you can't be always 100% prepared, but we're well prepared then to go into negotiations with corporates.
Excellent. No, thanks, Fabian. Coming back to the corporates, Nick and Kim, about the topic payment terms, flexibilization in that, I guess yes, but I don't want to put the words in your mouth too.
Yeah, maybe I'll take this first. So we absolutely try to meet suppliers where they are. Like how Tim talked about, flexible payment terms. Some of the other things that we do is we have something here called the DGI, the Diversity Growth Initiative, where we really work with suppliers to become more scalable, to develop, to give them additional work with BP. So we do a lot of really intentional, as I mentioned before, and favorable things in order to push them within our supply chain a bit more. So we spend a lot of time working with them, and I think Fabian hit it on the head with the development of growth. How do we help them to get there? One other small thing that I did want to mention is we're actually in the process, and I was going to talk about this a bit later, with some more innovative things, but we're actually teeing up something called the Shark Tank. I'm not sure how familiar folks are with that, but how do we have an incubation, where we bring in suppliers who maybe wouldn't typically have an opportunity, and we talk to them about what they're bringing to the table and how they can work with BP in the future. So we try to do a number of things to meet people where they are. And I think Fabian brought up another really good point. We come to those folks through organizations like EGLCC. So the importance of partnering with those types of organizations is extremely important.
Yeah, and I don't have much more to add. We also try and meet where we can. In some countries, we have signed up with the government around SMEs and diverse suppliers, where you're paying in 14 days versus 90 days, right? So it depends. We always try and come in at for diverse suppliers at a much lower payment term rate, and again,
model. About the registration and certification criteria. So you are registering, or you get the diverse suppliers, LGBTIQ suppliers registered in your association, in the chamber, in the Chamber of Commerce, and you are also we heard about like coaching them as well, right? And then folks from corporates like Meg, Peter, or Kim come to you and say, hey, help me find out diverse suppliers, LGBTIQ suppliers in a certain country that are specialized in whatever area of business, right? How's the process to register and certificate those companies?
Sure. We started with registration 2020, so we are now 1 year something live with registration. I think if the numbers are going up, although we still need to bear in mind that we are not in US, we are in Europe, and I think Europe also is a bit specific when it comes to supply diversity, and we are only at the beginning of tapping into supply diversity. So it's super simple, because as EGLCC is the umbrella organization, there is only one standard when it comes to registration. So there is one database, and there's also one entry into the database. So when you go to the EGLCC, you look at self-registration. It's already now available in 3 languages. So that's English, that's German, and Italian. And we are collecting the most important information. These information are quite similar what also other advocacy organizations, so our partner organizations, are collecting, being it We Connect International, so advocating for the women-owned businesses, or MSD UK advocating in Europe and the UK for the ethnic minorities. So these are business information. These are also specific information when it comes to the services, when it also comes to the categories. Obviously the categories, so the procurement categories, this is something what we need to then double check and make sure that the primary and secondary category is selected correctly. It's also about the ownership information. So we are not only collecting information about the commercial register, so that this is something what we can double check, that yes, this company is existing, and also the information which are in the application are matching with the commercial register. But it's also about the share of LGBTIQ persons as ownership and also management. There are a few additional information, obviously, the links to the website, contacts, and social media. So this is the application which is submitted. It first goes to us, to EGLCC, so we make the first validation. Unfortunately, time to time it comes to some, incomplete information, so we are making certain remarks, what is still missing, or whether maybe, the ownership is not clear, and then depends. If it's coming from the country, let's say Italy, where we have a local chamber, then this is sent over to the Italian chamber, so IGLBC, and they are doing the validation. And this is actually one of the important points of EGLCC, that we have the local presence. Because we can do a European standard, which is also super important, that there is only one entry point, and for the corporates, there is only one kind of door that they need to go to. But it's important to be also in the local communities. Not only to actually then bring additional networking within the country and within the local, in this specific case, Italian business community, but also about the validations, when it comes to the business and the qualifications for LGBTIU owned and operated business. If this all is correct, then we are receiving back the information from the local chamber, and then this business is available in the central database, available for our corporate partners. So then our corporate partners have the access to the database, and then obviously can search based on different criteria, being it on the region, being it on the different categories, so sourcing categories, being it even up to some keywords. And so this is in a nutshell how it works. Maybe what's important to say is so who qualifies to be part of the database? We are talking about registration, and here this is the first step into the whole supply diversity. So first kind of entry step, I would say. We are working also towards certification. So certification, which would also then bear the seal, and that yes, this is a certified business. Then we are also checking the documents presented. But here we need to also understand the specifics of LGBTIQ, because it's different from women-owned business. In our case, in some countries, and it's also different across Europe. So in some countries, our job is maybe easier. In Germany, we can be presented a marriage certificate, we can be presented a civil partnership, but when we come to, I don't know, Italy, suddenly the marriage certificate not, and if you go to, I don't know, from just Austria a little bit east to Slovakia, you cannot present neither marriage certificate, neither registered partnership. So then suddenly we have to work out with some additional documents, and for these things, this local chamber is super important to really know whether the business person is from the community or not. And we should not also forget that the list of LGBTIQ, it's not only for LGBT, it's also trans. So how do we actually go with the certification that we really want those applicants to come with also the whole history? That's actually not what we want to do. So we are now finalizing the whole certification concept, so that we are by end of the year ready to also open our certification. Having said that, we also see different requirements from our corporate partners. So some corporate partners are understanding our process as it is at the moment, and this is sufficient for supply diversity. There are some companies who would then require addition of the certification, but it's actually also in Europe a certain growing number of corporates who are fine with such a process of really validating whether the business is qualifying for owned and operated by LGBTI.
Let me just make a comment here, because it's really important piece of information. I mean, for me, I didn't know about the verification, the validation process, and I guess many folks joining us today did not know that as well. So it's really document based. It's not only on self-declaration, right? It's not just supplier saying, ticking the box, yes, I am a LGBTIQ owned business, but we go through a due diligence process in order to check this information, right?
Well, for us, it's important that if we are offering a business to our corporate partners, then we are standing behind the business. Not only in terms of the ownership, not only in terms of basically knowing the business and knowing also the scope of the business, but also to actually offer a credible business, right? So this is actually also somehow in our interest to be quite diligent on this one.
Absolutely. We are kind of going back and forth a